New California. Patty Plum and Ron Plum, her husband, we got talking together on how we're going to go forward without those dreaded voting machines. Now, you just possibly can't count a ballot without that. Well, yes, you can. So we met together, I think there were 5 of us, in a pizza parlor of all things. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and we were figuring we would be there for an hour. We were there for 4 hours. And at the end of the day, my background is I spent 42 years managing and started as a laborer in a power plant, in a coal power plant, and ended up building $750,000 million power plants as a plant manager and asset manager and operating them. And came to Redding in 2017 on a family emergency and have been there since. But in 2018, I got tapped on the shoulder by the Lord. He says, hey, you're retired. That doesn't mean sit on your tail all day. So what happened is I ended up being in the primary in 2018. I was called down to Red Bluff, California, and we went through a Election Integrity Project California training on election code. And I became the only observer in Shasta County in the 2018 primary for Election Integrity Project. I never saw a single Democratic Party member or Republican on any polls or in any county office appearance that I was at. There was no one. California law says every citizen in California may observe voting in the polls and at the registrar's office. Watch the ballot processing. People aren't aware of that. It's your right. It's our right. And so I started working from there. I had 7 elections I watched through the county. In 2018, they picked up, oh man, we got the best voting machine in the world. It's great. It has no internet connectivity to it. It's wonderful. And guess what? They picked up 70 Dominion voting machines. 70 of them. And they're sitting there in the office. And they had an open house, too, and showed everybody how wonderful they were. But we want fair and honest elections. That's all I get from the register. She's been in office for 20 years now, 16 of which she was unopposed. She runs every 4 years. That's not representation. Yep. So at the end of the 16 years, I said, you know what? Lord, I'm sitting here. I'm retired. I've seen enough. I've had enough. Let me know what you want me to do. I finally decided after praying about it, talking to dealers. We had a Freedom Coalition going in Shasta County. We were meeting every Thursday night. We would have videos. We had Dr. Frank even come out to us and speak to us. And it's funny, the night he spoke to us in Shasta County in this church, he went home, and that night, when he got back home, the FBI was there to take his phone, seize his phone, that very night. We've had citizens and patriots like myself in Shasta County that have had, for whatever reason, visits from the FBI, visits from sheriff's officers and everything, asking questions of the neighbors and such. It's like, why? Oh, yeah, because you're getting to a sensitive part that they don't want you there. New California has filed, I believe Patty will tell you, 400 affidavits, signed affidavits, that are before our sheriff right now, and supposedly she's telling me that there's 2 detectives that are assigned full-time to review all those affidavits for validity and potential lawsuit, prosecution. The world is listening. The world is listening, and if I point my finger at you, I always told my staff when it was working for me, there's 3 fingers pointing back to me. It's not just me, but I need help, and we all need help to make this work with God's plan. So what we're doing in Shasta County, we had a supervisor that had been a city council member. He'd been the mayor of Redding, and he was also the chief of police of Redding Police Department. And then he went over to the Board of Supervisors. What I just said was a career politician. And he ruled the board like it was his own little dominion. And he would say, we're never going to talk about Dominion any further. We're done. We're going to keep Dominion. Don't even bring it up in this chambers. He would shut us down. Second Amendment rights, they mean nothing. We're never going to talk about Second Amendment in these chambers anymore. I'm sorry. God didn't make you king, right? You work for we the people. So guess what? He got removed from office with a recall. With a few weeks later, next thing you know, the legislature's working on a new bill to prohibit we the people from selecting a replacement person for that person. They want to be able to appoint that person from the governor's office and then wait for 6 years for we the people to get our right to vote to replace them. That's the kind of thing. When we got rid of Dominion voting machines on January 24th, the board, when we got rid of Mr. Modi, his name was, in District 2, on January 24th of this year, we took a vote to get rid of Dominion voting machines. I come from a background with contracts, and I look at contracts and tort law, and I looked through the Dominion machines. They were a release of all things to 2025, and the cancellation clause said there was no requirements for any reason, no penalties, financially or other. Just pick up the phone and tell them to come get their garbage. So we put it through the board, and the board voted, come get your garbage. So they're gone. So they had one election, and that was Shasta Lake City had a city council person that was needed to be replaced, and they did. It's done, it's counted, it's history. We're waiting for Dominion to come get their garbage out of the registrar's office. In the meantime, I'm talking to Patty Plum because she was part of our Freedom Coalition as well. And in the meantime, Mike Lindell, Frank's speech, is working with a lady and her husband, Linda Rance. She currently lives in St. Louis County, Missouri, in St. Louis. Her and her husband took it upon themselves. They know Mike Lindell personally, and he works with them quite regularly, and they work together as a team on elections. They'd gotten their RV, and they towed their fifth wheel all the way down to Louisiana from St. Louis and went down there and started going from parish to parish, asking them how do they hand count their ballots in their parishes, because Louisiana has a lot of parishes that hand count ballots very successfully. So they took all that information down, went back to St. Louis, and they wrote this 293-page manual on hand counting ballots. Very interesting. It's a book of the 293 pages, 63 pages are the directions how to do it per Missouri law. The rest of it is documentation supporting that procedure here, and they have URL codes in it, so you can take your camera, pull it on it, and it'll pull it right up and show you what it's referencing firsthand. It's a really good thing. Mike, if you still want it, I would like to send you an electronic copy of this, and you can share it. It says right in the cover, electronically, it can be shared with anyone without cost.
We're all getting a copy. Yeah, send one to me, Mike.
So this was a really nice thing to happen. Then the nice thing that happened here, it's been a month ago. I got a call on a Friday night when one of the board supervisors says, hey, would you meet me tomorrow at Garden Hilton Hotel at 2 o'clock? Yeah, sure, what's up? Oh, I'd like to have you sit there with me because you've got election code knowledge. Well, I do. Because when it came to the hand count, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit further, but when we came to the hand count, we had an attorney show up with his wife from Tallahassee, Florida on their own expense. And prior to that, he was a computer programmer for 20 years. So he shows up, and he's showing up there telling us how we can flip elections with a phone, with a charge cable. You know, I saw this yesterday on a video, even a charge cable for your phone. It plugs into the wall, or it plugs into your USB port and plugs into your phone. Guess what? Inside that charge cable, you would never know it, but there's a computer chip in there. When you plug it into the computer that runs the voting machines, it says, oh, there's another keyboard here, and it starts uploading code directly into the machine that quick, and it flips votes. You look at that charge code, and it looks like the one you've got in your homes. Doesn't matter if it's an Apple or if it's a Galaxy or what it is. That's where we're at with these machines. You ever have a hack of your bank account? Yeah, electronics can be hacked. Why do we want electronics? So that's why we went to hand counting. During the hand counting, attorney on one side, a volunteer attorney out of Long Beach on the other side. He's a 501c not-for-profit attorney. He's an election attorney out of Long Beach. His name is Rex Haverberry. It's all nonprofit, and they take on election codes. And he's helped the Election Integrity Project California, sue Los Angeles County on their voter rolls to the tune that they have 1.5 million ineligible people on their voting rolls. And they were told in a lawsuit, get rid of them. He successfully, with other attorneys, were able to get LA County found guilty and had to remove 1.5 million illegal voters from the rolls. So he was sitting on one side, and he spoke at the board meetings, and Clinton talked to the other side. So they tried to speak to the board, and they got hackled down, or a lot of hassles. People were just screaming and hollering because they wanted to keep the voting machines. They didn't think a hand counting would work. And the register of voters, the county clerk showed up. She made her presentation, and she said it's going to cost $1.6 million to hire, 1,200 hand counters, and do background checks on them, and pay them a county wage. Why? They're temporary employees. You have poll workers that you pay $100 for a 14-hour day on elections, plus 3 hours for training. Why don't we have volunteers? It only makes sense, right? So she was just trying to paint the bad black picture, the clouds in front of us. The world's going to end if we go to hand counting, and that fell apart. Then what she started to do, and she's telling us, well, there's no way we can count 111,000 ballots in 30 days so I can certify the election to the Secretary of State. I was up on that one beforehand because I met with the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, and I shoved a piece of paper across the table to him and said, read this and understand it. It was a California election code, and it quoted the number of the election code. It was 301. But any person in this room can go search CA space election code, hit enter, and every one of you can become a genius on California election code if you have nothing better to do. But anyway, I shoved that in his hand. He looked at it, and he's up there running this meeting in front of all these folks. And it was a packed house. There's 299 seats in our chamber. And there's people standing around the outside. And we had LA media there. We had Gateway Pundit was there. We had all these different people there watching and videotaping and interviewing folks. And the clerk says, well, I can't possibly do this within 30 days. And the chairman says, are you familiar with code 15301 of the election code in California? She goes, no, I don't really think so. So he said, may I read it to you? And he read it to her. And that code stated, the election official of the county may approach the Superior Court judge of the county and request a 30-day extension for hand counting ballots. So it shut her down with a heart, and he says, are you aware of that code? She goes, oh, no. I would have followed up immediately, and you've been sitting in that chair for 20 years on all these election committees? And just left it hanging in people's minds. But hand counting, we've got 400 volunteers right now in 3 weeks. And so what I'm doing right now is I've taken it upon myself. We don't know how long it would take to count 1,100,000 ballots, because there's allegedly in 2020 there was 1,100,000 ballots in Shasta County that were supposedly voted. That's another challenge for another day. I don't have time for that, but anyway, what I'm doing is there's 24 contests in here with anything from 2 to 7 different people running for 3 positions. We're going to sit down with a team of probably 40, maybe 50 people and divide them up into 4 people. So there's 2 people on each stage of the hand count, and they're verifying each other, and we're going to hand count. And we're going to time how long it takes to do 500 ballots. And then I'm going to get the accuracy, how many errors were made in that 500 ballot count. The clerk says, oh, we're going to have up to 25% error rate if you're hand counting. In her dreams. If you look at history right here, it's less than 1%. And what happens when the voting machine gets done? They tabulate it all up on the voting machine. Guess what? State law requires a 1% hand count to validate the voting machine. Why is that? Oh, hand counting is more accurate than a voting machine? That's what they're allotting to, but they're not admitting it. But when we said we're hand counting, oh my goodness, you would have thought that something terrible just happened. But it's we the people standing up and saying, we've had enough. I ran for the county clerk's office in 2022 because I was fed up. I prayed to the God, prayed, Lord, guide me. I don't want to do this. I retired. I'm done. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm working, I'm helping other folks and stuff. That's just what I do. But I got boing upside the head. No, if not you, who? And everywhere I went, from the Freedom Coalition to all these groups I'm involved with, they said, will you run, will you run? I finally said, sure. So we put together a campaign, we raised money, got a campaign committee going, and ran the campaign all over the county. I was in the outlying areas all over the county, meeting and greeting people, knocking on doors, talking to them, meeting at pizza bars, pizza parlors and stuff, talking to people, and they were saying, we never see anybody for countywide elections up here. That's just not heard of. I says, well, I'm here. And I looked around and says, and there's 4 other guys here with me for the countywide positions. The DA was there, the sheriff's deputy was there. All these people were there. So it's a new Shasta County. Got rid of the old and bring in the new. But when you meet about this board of supervisor individual that needs to take a hike, you, the people, can do it. I'm pointing at you, not me. I can't do it. You need to point at me and say, I can do it. It's not easy. We found all kinds of, we have to put a petition in. They have 30 people have to sign the petition to recall this individual. And they had to be registered voters in Shasta County. Okay. Of course, everybody will sign a petition, but are they really registered right? So you go out and you look at the person, they say, oh yeah, I live here. They signed a petition. Well, guess what? They got divorced and their name changed, or they got married and their name changed, or they no longer have registered because they moved and just bought that house. So 30% of the signatures we had for the petitions on the first time around were not valid registers because they moved, the names changed, that kind of thing. People had deceased. So then we turned around and we figured that out. So I got the voter rolls and I went through and I was verifying every signature on everything, not signatures, excuse me, every name and the address on them, and make sure that they were the right house. 30% were not at the right house of the registry, and there's 115,000 people in Shasta County registered right now. 30%. My sister-in-law lives with us. She's 11 months younger than my wife, and she got 2 ballots this year. Last election, she got 2 ballots. Why? I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me. But those are the things that are happening, and they're happening in your backyard. But we just got to get out there and look. Turn over the cover and look underneath. See what's there. They'll tell you a good story, but it's not there. So I don't want to keep anymore. God bless you. I'm going to be out front if you're interested. It's, God is entrusting us to take care of some of our own dirty laundry, okay? Thank you.
Yeah, we have time for a question or two. Does someone have a question for Bob? Yeah.
Did you get elected to the position of recorder? No.
If I got elected, I probably wouldn't be here today. Election night, we had an election night party. There were 6 of us running against incumbents. One of them was a Democrat. Mike Challenger, the clerk's the only registered Democrat in those 6. The other one was a district attorney, and those 2 positions were, they were not going to give those up for nothing. The other 4 positions were very close. Ultimately, 2 of them prevailed. Nobody got a 50% plus 1 vote on either side. So they went into the general election in November, and 2 of those folks came out ahead with probably about 50 to 150 votes over the other existing candidate. My thing started out about 60% by about 11 o'clock at night based upon votes that have been tabulated on election day. And it's like, wow, looking good. And then over the course of the next couple hours, it started going down and going down and going down and going down. ended up getting beat by 67% to 22%. Now, how does that happen? I outspent her. I had 500 signs around the county, including Shasta County, Fall River. I was up at the Fall River. They had a balloon festival up there. We were up there, and wind, it was about 40 miles an hour that day. So we were all over, Shingletown, Bernie, all around the county. That county's 640,000 square miles, and I was all over that place. Outspent her. She had 12 signs in town, I believe. I was on the radio, TV ads, and no, we didn't win. But we tried.
Thank you. Yeah, the county clerk, are they the ones who are responsible for the election integrity and taking care of the election system? Is that what the county clerk does?
They're supposed to. They have the clerk's facility requirements, and then they also do the voter registration now, as well in the elections.
Is there any tapes or videos you ran into that almost shows conclusive evidence that Dominions are BS that we could show our local county clerk up in Wairika? She's been given that information.
If they're breathing and their heart's still beating, and they're a county clerk, they've already seen it. They know exactly.
We hit her hard on questioning every time.
Because my county clerk is going around training all the other county clerks in California, and that gives me a real warm feeling too.
Okay, so the county clerk's in charge of her own election integrity, is that right?
The county clerk in Shasta County, we took her to the Fair Political Process Commission, and they all through their rules and regulations talk about conflict of interest and how you had to be trained and everything. Well, guess what? She's overseeing her own election. Yeah. So I can't do it as a candidate. We had other folks file a complaint. It came back from the FPPC, as they're called, and they said, oh, there's nothing here to be seen. And so someone else filed a complaint. It came back and says, well, you need to take this to our election bureau and have them review it. It came back and said, oh, I don't see anything problem here. So she oversaw her own election, and this is the kind of results you get.
Can our county supervisor do something to put pressure on that?
We tried that, and at the time, because we didn't have the 3-2 majority, and at that time we did not have the vote to make an ordinance and make her step aside. And so they have the authority to do that, but we didn't have the 3-2 vote.
Do you have it now?
That's questionable.
That's another story. So, county supervisor in charge of the elections.
Critical.
There's
They were going to get an ordinance and put an election judge to oversee that election, but they couldn't get the vote.
county supervisor in charge of the elections. Supervisors can vote them out too. So, supervisors and the county clerk. These are registrar of voters. And according to Aaron too, Aaron Ryan, she said that's who controls the elections for your county.
And I'll just say, every county operates the same. Siskiyou is the same as Shasta. The county clerk, registrar of voters, is under the umbrella, really, of the state. So they can defer any question, any conflict. They'll say, state approved it. State says I can do it. The rules of the state say this is what has to happen. Nope, can't get rid of Dominion. It's been certified by the state. I can't do it. My hands are tied. The state says I have to do it. They'll all use that excuse because they're all trained by the same people in Sacramento, every single county. So it's rare that you actually get an independent person that's willing to put their neck out and do something different.
Last night I was at a central
Last
committee
words.
meeting fundraiser, and people that came from Yuba County, Placer County, Modoc County came down there, and Placer County was just singing the praises of their register of voters, how wonderful they were. Said, what do you need? And they would tell him, and he says, you got it. And it would instantly be fixed that week. Wow, what a difference.
So if we don't have clear voting rights, then there's a problem. It needs to be resolved.
I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. for the battle belongs to you, Lord.